Creator, Redeemer, and Sustainer. Amen. What is in a 7-mile walk from Jerusalem to Emmaus? This is the third account of Jesus' appearance that we hear since Easter. First it was to Mary in the grave. Second, it was to Thomas and to the disciples. And today we hear a third appearance of Jesus. Yesterday, Susan and I had an occasion to meet with an old friend, Noah Bullock, the executive director of Crystal Salt Foundation in El Salvador. It is an internationally recognized human rights organization. Noah and us, we go way back early 2000. I was the rector of a church in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania. Okay, do I have to repeat what I said earlier? No. Okay. So at Phoenixville, the St. Peter's Church in Phoenixville, where I was a rector for 13 years, every summer, almost every summer, but 11 summers, people from St. Peter's, about 17, 18 people, would travel to El Salvador in mission work, to work with actually Noah Bullock and Crystal Salt Foundation, basically on human rights, to learn about that. So while we were there, an equal number of El Salvadorans also joined us, pairing with El Salvadorans and North Americans, together. We traveled to different places within El Salvador, especially those places that is important in the life of the people of El Salvador. We visited the chapel where Archbishop Romero was assassinated, was gunned down while he was conducting the Mass, was preaching against the abuses of the military government at the time. This is in the 80s. So we visited that, and then we visited the Central American University where 6 Jesuit priests were murdered by the military government for documenting human rights abuses that are taking place in El Salvador. We also went to see the American nuns who were murdered. So these were the places where together we visited and saw and experienced what people in El Salvador went through maybe a couple decades earlier. So going through all that places, together, we felt like we were walking in solidarity with each other, with the people of El Salvador and North Americans together. And towards the end of our stay there for 7 days or so, we had communion. And we experienced the resurrected Christ in our midst as we joined together in the walk and then together come to have that powerful Eucharist together. So it all came to me yesterday when we were visiting Noah Bullock at All Saints Church in Palo Alto, where he was the main speaker. This walking together is different from walking alone. Remember last week the gospel lesson about Thomas. Thomas was alone, grieving alone, away from the rest of the disciples. And the rest of the disciples had experienced the risen Christ, and when he was told that, we saw risen Christ, Thomas wanted to see also. So he joined with them. So in community. And today we are talking about two people walking together from Jerusalem to Emmaus, their village. So on that first Easter Sunday afternoon, these two friends were on a 7-mile walk from Jerusalem to Emmaus. Their heads down, their hearts sunk, and their feet heavy. Their expectations were shattered, dreams dashed, and their walk was going to be slow, painful, and arduous. They had hoped their master would redeem Israel. Instead, they had witnessed their master being betrayed, being left alone to defend himself, and executed in the most horrendous and humiliating manner. And the last they heard was that before leaving Jerusalem was that the tomb was open and the body was missing. Disappointed and humiliated by their loss, they decided to return home back to their previous mundane lives. Isn't this road to Emmaus story familiar to us at all? We have been on this road before, one time or another. Perhaps some of us may be on such a road right now. It's a story of, but we had hoped. But we had hoped. Haven't we all experienced in our lives a different and painfully disappointing outcome than the one that we expected, we hoped for? Doesn't this story remind us of the sisters of Lazarus, who said to Jesus, if only you had been here, he would not have died. If only Judas didn't betray Jesus. If only Peter didn't deny Jesus. If only Thomas didn't urge Jesus and the disciples to go to Bethany and Jerusalem. All these, if only it happened, things would have been different kind of story. That is the story of all our lives. We had hoped the tumor wasn't malignant. We had hoped our marriage was happier. We had hoped our children would have done better in school and would have been more successful in finding careers. We had hoped our young people would not have experimented with opioids and addicted to drugs. We had hoped for better health in our retirement days. We had hoped we would not have gone into the latest war or any war. We had hoped we were more responsible for our environment. It's a story of failures to act or not to act at the right time. The words we speak on the road to Emmaus are pain and disappointment, bewilderment and yearning. These are the words of defeat. They are the words we say when we come to the end of our hopes, when our expectations are dashed and cherished dreams are dead, and there is nothing left to do but leave defeated and done. We lamented that we had hoped differently. The going home to Emmaus walkers' words are words of grief over death of the one they thought who would have redeemed Israel. Their language is similar to that of the psalmist's lament. It is not a whining or denial, it is a cry of desperation, directed to God as that of Martin Luther King Jr. was made from his kitchen table in Montgomery after hearing another death threat against him yet. He said, "Lord, I'm down here trying to do what is right. But Lord, I must confess that I am weak now. I'm faltering, I'm losing my courage. Now I'm afraid I'm at the end of my powers. I have nothing left. I've come to the point where I can face it alone." Let us remember that this is also an Easter story. And it means that sometimes new life comes in fits and starts. Sometimes seeing and recognizing the risen Christ is hard. Perhaps many of us could identify with this resurrection story than the others. Not like the one that Mary experienced in the garden, or not like Thomas, not just visible but tactile experience of resurrection. But today's experience of resurrection is more like the one that we would experience. It resonates with our own lives. It's a story of hope that is still possible but not yet realized. Friends, this road of brokenness and failure is also a sacred road. A sacred road that you are walking with another. And as we do, an unseen presence, an unseen person is also walking with us, along with us. It's a road that honors our disappointment, even as it holds our possibilities of nourishment and revelation. Here, St. Paul's walk with Trinity Center. That is, walking with them, we experience the presence of Christ as a church. When we do that with others, when we do that in mission, walking in solidarity with other people, that is when the third person walking alongside with us. Yesterday when Noah Bullock talked about the current situation in El Salvador, it was hard to find the risen Christ. El Salvador now is under a dictator supported by our government. Noah is kicked out of El Salvador. Ruth Lopez, one of their staff members, a prominent human rights lawyer, is now a political prisoner, jailed without trial. And it's going to be, next month it is going to be a year since she has been in prison. Cristobal Foundation no longer has a presence there in El Salvador. They now operate from Guatemala. On our way back home, yesterday, Susan and I, in the car. Susan very disappointed about the outcome of all that work together we did in El Salvador. What next? What's the point of doing all this work? It sounded like the friends from MAS, how Cristosal could continue its human rights work anymore. But Noah and us, when we met, it was such a joyful kind of thing. Within such a short time, we hugged each other a couple of times. And seeing him still doing this work gave me hope. And him seeing us, that even after many years, we were also interested in what he is doing, gave him hope. And together in our meeting, we kind of experienced the presence of risen Christ. In our gospel story, we see a stranger join Cleopas and his partner. He listened to them, reasoned with them, and gave them his take on all that had happened, which made their hearts burn. Still, they couldn't recognize the stranger. The Messiah they thought they had loved would have remained a stranger if they hadn't extended their hospitality to him to stay with them that night. Then everything changed. The stranger became a guest. Not just a guest, he became the host. He took bread, blessed, and broke it, and gave it to them. Then they recognized the stranger who was walking alongside with them. And then Jesus vanished from them. This morning, in few moments, we will be coming to take the Holy Eucharist. As we gather around this table, as we share our community, our hurts, pain, disappointments, hopes, and dreams and yearnings, know that a third person, an unseen person, is walking with us, and he is going to feed us. As we partake this, pray that we experience the risen Christ in our midst, in our trials and toils in this life, and that we celebrate the Eucharist for nourishment for the journey that is ahead. And Jesus also said, not only that I am walking with you, I will be always with you, but he also said, I'm going ahead of you, meaning that our next stop is going to be, Jesus is going to be waiting there for us. So may we experience the presence of Christ this morning as we partake the holy bread and wine. Amen.